Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. Jon Snow awoke with the dawn, the remnants of his dragon dream still vivid in his mind. The sensation of the dragon's heat, the echo of its voice calling to him, lingered like a whisper against his skin. But as he sat up, the weight of reality crashed down upon him, heavier than the blankets that had cocooned him during the night. He felt different, brooding, distracted, and restless. The fire within him, ignited by the dream, had turned into a smoldering ember that threatened to consume him. Thoros had warned him about the visions, but Jon could not shake the feeling that something significant was brewing within him, something that demanded his attention. "Jon," Thoros' voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. The Red Priest sat across the room, his brow furrowed with concern. "You've been quiet this morning. What troubles you?" Jon shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "Just thinking," he muttered, his mind racing with the implications of his dream. He could feel Thoros' piercing gaze on him, the weight of the priest's scrutiny making him uncomfortable. "Thinking can be a dangerous pastime," Thoros said, his tone grave, "especially when one has seen what you have. The fire reveals truths, but it also hides them. You must be careful, Jon." Jon nodded, but the warning felt distant. He was becoming increasingly aware of the world around him, the whispers of the Red Keep, the secrets that lingered in the shadows. Yet, he found himself lashing out at those who tried to help him, frustration bubbling to the surface like a boiling pot. Thoros had taken to using Jon as an errand boy within the Red Keep, sending him on small tasks that kept him out of trouble. Jon didn't mind the work. It gave him a sense of purpose amidst the chaos of his thoughts. He delivered messages, fetched wine, and even helped clean the stables, all while trying to navigate the complex web of intrigue that surrounded him. One afternoon, while running an errand to the dungeons, Jon's curiosity got the better of him. The air grew colder as he descended the stone steps, the flickering torches casting eerie shadows on the walls. He had heard tales of the dungeons, of the prisoners who lingered in darkness, and of the secrets that were whispered in hushed tones. As he approached the heavy wooden door leading to the lower levels, Jon paused. Voices drifted through the cracks, low and conspiratorial. He leaned closer, straining to hear. "A storm across the sea," one voice said, smooth and silky. Jon recognized it immediately. Varys, the enigmatic spy master of the realm. The other voice was unfamiliar, but it carried a weight that sent shivers down Jon's spine. "Illyrio Mopatis," Jon breathed to himself, recalling the name Thoros had mentioned in passing, a merchant with ties to the east, rumored to be involved in plots that reached far beyond the shores of Westeros. "A dragon yet unclaimed," Varys continued, his tone laced with intrigue. "The time is drawing near, my friend. We must ensure it finds its way to us before the storm breaks." Jon's heart raced. He didn't understand the full weight of their words, but the phrases lodged in his mind like arrows, sharp and piercing. What storm? What dragon? The questions swirled in his head, but he knew he had to remain silent, hidden in the shadows. "Remember, Varys," Illyrio replied, his voice smooth as silk. "The game we play is dangerous. We cannot afford to be careless. Our enemies are watching." Jon felt a chill creep up his spine. Enemies? Watching? The implication of danger loomed large, and he realized he had stumbled into a world far larger than himself, a game of power and deceit that he was only beginning to comprehend. After he had delivered his message, Jon found himself wandering through the familiar streets of Flea Bottom, the weight of what he had overheard pressing heavily on his shoulders. He needed to talk to someone, to share the burden of the knowledge he had gained. When he spotted Ygritte near the stables, laughter bubbling from her lips as she teased a group of boys playing a game of stickball, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. She was a breath of fresh air amidst the suffocating atmosphere of the Red Keep. "Jon," Ygritte called, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You look like you've seen a ghost, or perhaps a dragon." "Very funny," Jon replied, forcing a smile. "I'm just thinking." "Thinking again," she teased, stepping closer. "What's got your head all twisted up this time? You're not plotting to take over the Seven Kingdoms, are you?" Jon chuckled, but the laughter felt hollow. "Not quite. I overheard something today. Something important." Ygritte's expression shifted, curiosity piquing her interest. "Oh, what did you hear? Are you becoming a spy now, Jon? A crow with ears too big?" "Maybe I am," he replied, a hint of pride creeping into his voice. "But it's serious." Varys was talking to Illyrio Mopatis in the dungeons. They mentioned a storm across the sea and a dragon yet unclaimed. Ygritte's eyes widened, her teasing demeanor fading. A dragon? You're not pulling my leg, are you? No, I swear, Jon insisted, feeling the weight of his words. They sounded worried, like something big is coming. It sounded like they were not talking about actual dragon, but it was a code word for someone or something else. I have heard them talking before about the same person. Ygritte studied him for a moment, then grinned. This is thrilling. We're in the middle of a real adventure, Jon. Just like the stories. Jon couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. It's not a game, Ygritte. It feels dangerous. Dangerous is fun, she replied, nudging him playfully. Besides, if you're a spy, I'll be your partner. We can uncover the secrets of the Red Keep together. Jon felt a warmth spread through him at the thought of sharing this experience with her. All right, partner, he said, a newfound sense of camaraderie blossoming between them. But we have to be careful. We don't know who we can trust. That evening, Jon found himself once again in the company of Thoros, who was nursing a goblet of wine by the fire. The flickering flames cast shadows across the room, illuminating the Red Priest's weary face. Jon, Thoros said, his tone serious as he noticed the boy's troubled expression. You've been quiet since you returned. What weighs on your mind? I overheard Varys and Illyrio in the dungeons, Jon confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. They were talking about a storm and a dragon. I don't understand what it means, but it felt important. Thoros' expression darkened, and he leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Illyrio Mopatis is one of the fat spiders in silk, Jon. He weaves webs of intrigue that ensnare those who are not careful. You must remember what you hear, but do not speak of it. Jon nodded, the gravity of Thoros' words sinking in. I won't. Good, Thoros replied, his voice grave. The games played in the Red Keep are dangerous. You are a pawn in a game far larger than yourself. Be vigilant, and do not let your curiosity lead you into peril. The warning echoed in Jon's mind as he left Thoros' chambers, the weight of his knowledge settling heavily on his shoulders. He felt like a small cog in a vast machine, one that could easily be crushed if he wasn't careful. Days passed, and Jon found himself increasingly distracted by the whispers of the Red Keep. The conversations he overheard only deepened his unease, filling his mind with questions that seemed to have no answers. One afternoon, while running another errand, Jon overheard a heated argument between two lords discussing the state of the realm. The crown is losing control, one said, his voice laced with anger. The people are restless, and the gold cloaks can't keep them in line forever. Perhaps we should consider a different approach, the other replied, his tone cautious. If we push too hard, we risk igniting a rebellion. Jon's heart raced at the implications of their words. A rebellion? The thought sent chills down his spine. He had seen the suffering of the people in Flea Bottom, the desperation that drove them to steal just to survive. If the crown lost control, chaos would reign. Later that day, he met Ygritte in their usual spot near the stables. She was perched on a fence, her hair whipping in the wind, a playful smile on her face. You look like you've seen a ghost again, Jon. What's troubling you now? I overheard some lords talking about a rebellion, Jon admitted, feeling the weight of his words. They think the crown is losing control. Ygritte's expression turned serious. That's not good. If the people rise up, it could be dangerous for everyone, especially those who are already struggling. Jon nodded, the gravity of the situation settling in. We need to be careful. If things get worse, we might find ourselves caught in the middle of it. As the days turned into weeks, Jon found himself increasingly burdened by the weight of the secrets he carried. The dreams of dragons, the whispers of the Red Keep, and the tension brewing in the city all combined to create a storm of uncertainty within him. He confided in Ygritte more often, sharing his fears and doubts. They spent evenings discussing the state of the realm, the struggles of the common folk, and the potential for change. With each conversation, Jon felt a growing bond with her, a connection that transcended their circumstances. One night, as they sat beneath the stars, Jon spoke of his dream again. I can't shake the feeling that I'm meant for something more, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. The dragon called to me, and I feel like I'm being drawn into something bigger than myself. Ygritte turned to him, her expression serious. You're not just a boy, Jon. You have the heart of a leader. If you believe you can make a difference, then you should fight for it. But how? Jon asked, frustration creeping into his voice. I'm just a child. What can I do against the forces at play in the Red Keep? You can speak out, Ygritte urged, her eyes shining with conviction. You can rally others to your cause. You have the power to inspire change. Jon considered her words, feeling the weight of responsibility settle upon him. He realized that he could no longer sit idly by while the world around him unraveled. He had to take action, to stand up for those who could not stand for themselves. One evening, while running another errand for Thoros, Jon found himself wandering through the lower levels of the Red Keep, lost in thought. The shadows loomed large, and he felt a sense of foreboding settle in his gut. As he turned a corner, he nearly collided with a figure emerging from the darkness. It was Varys, his expression inscrutable as he regarded Jon with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Ah, young Snow," Varys said, his voice smooth and melodic. "What brings you to these depths? Are you searching for secrets?" Jon felt a shiver run down his spine. I was just delivering a message," he stammered, unsure of how to respond. "Secrets are a currency in the Red Keep, you know," Varys continued, his eyes glinting with intrigue. "And knowledge is power, especially for one so young and impressionable." Jon swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Varys's gaze. "I'm not looking for power," he replied, trying to sound confident. "I just want to help." Varys raised an eyebrow, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Helping is a noble pursuit, but be careful, young Snow. The path you tread is fraught with danger. There are those who would seek to silence you, if they deem you a threat." Jon felt a chill run through him. "I'm not a threat to anyone," he insisted. "Perhaps not yet," Varys said, his tone cryptic. "But remember, the winds of change are blowing, and they can shift unexpectedly. Keep your wits about you, Jon. You may find yourself in a position to influence the course of events." With that, Varys turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Jon standing alone, his heart racing. The encounter had rattled him, igniting a sense of unease that he couldn't shake. As the days turned into weeks, the tension within the Red Keep continued to mount. Jon could feel the undercurrents of discontent growing stronger, the whispers of rebellion echoing in the halls. He overheard conversations about food shortages, rising prices, and the growing unrest among the common folk. One afternoon, while running errands, Jon spotted a group of angry citizens gathered outside the Red Keep, shouting for justice. Their voices rang out, filled with frustration and desperation. "Enough of this tyranny," one man shouted, his voice hoarse. "We are starving while the lords feast." Jon felt a surge of empathy for the people, their struggles mirroring the hardships he had witnessed in Flea Bottom. He knew he had to do something, to stand up for those who could not stand for themselves. "Ygritte," he called, spotting her nearby. "We need to help them." Ygritte rushed over, her expression serious. "What do you have in mind?" "We can gather more people, rally them together," Jon suggested, his heart racing with determination. "If we can show the lords that the people are united, maybe they'll listen." Ygritte nodded, her eyes shining with conviction. "Let's do it. We can't let them suffer in silence." Together, they began to gather a small group of supporters, speaking to those who had gathered outside the Red Keep. Jon felt a sense of purpose igniting within him, a fire that pushed him to take action. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the city, Jon stood before the gathered crowd, his heart pounding in his chest. Ygritte stood beside him, her presence a source of strength, as he prepared to speak. "People of King's Landing," Jon called out, his voice steady despite the nerves churning in his stomach. "We stand here today not just as individuals, but as a united front against the injustices that plague our city." The crowd murmured, their eyes fixed on him with a mix of curiosity and hope. Jon took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their expectations resting on his shoulders. "We have suffered long enough," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "The lords feast while we starve. It is time for us to raise our voices and demand change." Ygritte cheered beside him, her enthusiasm infectious. "We will not be silenced any longer. We will fight for our rights." The crowd erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted by Jon's words. He felt a surge of energy coursing through him, a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. For the first time, he felt like he was part of something greater than himself. As the night wore on, Jon and Ygritte continued to rally the crowd, their voices rising above the din of discontent. They spoke of unity, of hope, and of the power that lay in their hands. The following days were filled with anticipation and uncertainty. Jon felt the weight of his actions pressing down on him, the reality of what he had started settling in. He had ignited a spark of rebellion, but he knew that the flames could easily consume them all. As he met with Ygritte to discuss their next steps, he couldn't shake the feeling of foreboding that hung in the air. "What if the lords retaliate?" he asked, worry creeping into his voice. "What if they come after us?" Ygritte's expression turned serious. "We have to be prepared for anything, but we can't back down now. We've started something important." Jon nodded, determination flickering in his chest. "You're right, we can't let fear stop us. We have to keep pushing for change." That night, as Jon lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The whispers of the Red Keep echoed in his mind, the words of Varys and Illyrio lingering like shadows in the corners of his thoughts. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in King's Landing continued to escalate. The people were restless, their anger boiling over as food shortages persisted, and the lords remained indifferent to their plight. Jon felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on his shoulders, the knowledge that he had sparked a movement that could change everything. One afternoon, while he was running errands for Thoros, Jon overheard a conversation between two guards discussing the growing unrest. "The people are ready to rise up," one guard said, his voice low and conspiratorial. "If the crown doesn't act soon, it could get ugly." Jon's heart raced at the implications of their words. A rebellion was brewing, and he knew they had to act quickly to channel the anger of the people into something constructive. He rushed to find Ygritte, knowing that she would share his urgency. "Ygritte," he called, spotting her near the stables, "we need to gather more support. The people are ready to rise up, and we have to guide them." Ygritte's eyes lit up with excitement. "Let's do it. We can't let them go to waste. If we can get more people on our side, we might just be able to turn this into something real." Together, they set off to gather their allies, speaking to anyone who would listen. They urged the people to unite, to stand together against the injustices they faced. Jon felt a surge of hope as more and more people joined their cause, their voices rising in unison. As the movement gained momentum, Jon found himself caught in a dangerous game. The whispers of the Red Keep grew louder, and he could feel the eyes of the lords upon him. He knew that they would not take kindly to the rebellion brewing in their midst. One evening, as he and Ygritte were discussing their plans, Thoros found them in the stables. His expression was grave, and Jon felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. "Jon," Thoros said, his voice low and urgent, "you must be cautious. The lords are not blind to what is happening. They will act to protect their power." "I know, Thoros," Jon replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "But we can't just sit back and do nothing. The people need us." "Be careful, lad," Thoros warned, his tone serious. "The game you are playing is dangerous. You are a pawn in a much larger scheme, and there are those who would seek to silence you if they see you as a threat." Jon nodded, feeling the weight of Thoros's words. He understood the risks involved, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. As tensions reached a boiling point, Jon found himself standing before a crowd of angry citizens, their voices rising in a cacophony of frustration and despair. He recognized many people among them were the ones that fought side by side with him before when he had a clash with gold cloaks earlier. He felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on him, the knowledge that he had become a symbol of hope for those who had none. "People of King's Landing," Jon called out, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We stand here today not just as individuals, but as a united front against the injustices that plague our city." The crowd erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted by Jon's words. He felt a surge of energy coursing through him, a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. But as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that danger was lurking just beyond the shadows. He had become a target, and he knew that the lords would not hesitate to act if they felt threatened. As the crowd continued to rally behind him, Jon felt a sense of purpose igniting within him. He was no longer just a boy caught in the shadows of the Red Keep. He was a leader, a voice for the voiceless, and he would not back down. If he would have paid attention, he would have noticed that Captain Selvin was standing with one of the Lancel boy in a narrow alley watching him with a sadistic smile. As Jon and the crowd rallied away, they started their conversation. Lannister boy spoke up. "This bastard of Stark is getting out of hands. He should play with wooden sticks with children, but yet somehow these poor filthy people want him to become their voice. Even if he is a bastard, if he contacts or starts using the influence of Ned Stark in King's Landing, he can become a problem for us." "Oh, that will never happen," said the Selwyn captain. "This boy is just a bastard, and he does not have enough brain to realize what resources he has in his hands. Did you see those rough-looking people among the crowd? I can bet that they are Ned's men protecting his bastard son secretly. And don't forget that Lord gave us a mission. He wants this boy dead. Let the bastard live his last days. We will take action as soon these Ned's men are away for even some time. But remember, only let your most loyal and trusted followers take action when time comes. It should look like it was a fight among rebels and gold clocks, and the boy got killed accidentally so that we don't face Lord Stark's wrath. Then they left the watch smiling cruelly. In the days that followed, the tension in King's Landing reached a breaking point. The lords began to take notice of the unrest, and Jon could feel the eyes of the city upon him. He had become a focal point for the growing movement, and with that came both power and danger. One evening, as he met with Ygritte to discuss their next steps, Jon felt a sense of foreboding settle in his gut. What if they come after us, he asked, worry creeping into his voice. Ygritte's expression turned serious. We have to be prepared for anything, but we can't back down now. We've started something important. Jon nodded, determination flickering in his chest. You're right, we can't let fear stop us. We have to keep pushing for change. That night, as Jon lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The whispers of the Red Keep echoed in his mind, the words of Varys and Illyrio lingering like shadows in the corners of his thoughts. As the sun rose over King's Landing, Jon felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through him. He had ignited a spark of rebellion, and he knew that he had to see it through. The people were counting on him, and he would not let them down. With Ygritte by his side, Jon prepared to face whatever challenges awaited them. He had become a voice for the voiceless, a champion for those who had none, and he would fight for a better future. As they stepped out into the bustling streets of King's Landing, Jon felt the weight of the world upon his shoulders. But he also felt a sense of hope, a flicker of light in the darkness. Together they would rise against the injustices that plagued their city, and they would not back down. The whispers of the Red Keep would not silence them. They would forge their own path and shape their own destiny. And as the dawn broke over the horizon, Jon felt a fire igniting within him, a fire that would lead him to confront the challenges ahead and embrace the destiny that awaited him. Tywin Lannister POV. Lannisters suffered some losses in the Greyjoy Rebellion, but now we have everything under control. My daughter is a queen, and soon my grandchildren will rule the Iron Throne, and it will become the property of Lannisters, and I will see to it. The king has recently become more lazy. He is drinking, gambling, and emptying his treasury, and now Kingdom has started taking loans from us. So to say that lions are more thriving than anyone in 7 kingdoms. Now, of course, for all this, I had to pull many strings. I want my kin to be fully prepared when the time comes to start the game for throne. Today I was on a business trip to Flea Bottom to do some shady things. As I was passing by the streets, I noticed a riot there. I have no curiosity for these petty things and people, but still out of curiosity. And some time passed, I decided to have a look, and there I saw that bastard boy of Eddard Stark. He was addressing people for a rebellion as if he could succeed. I had heard of that bastard boy from Cersei and others, and to say it truly, I don't care about this lesser boy. But today I saw a young boy with a fire in his eyes. This suddenly reminded me of King Robert when he started rebelling, and this also reminded me something more, like I was being stared by a dragon in the skin of a wolf. If my whim is correct, which is never wrong, then this boy will create some trouble for me in future. But I am not a person to see a trouble and let it be. So I decided to end this right now. I called one of my followers and told him to get rid of the boy. Do it in a way that does not start a war between lions and wolves. And after that, ended my work here, hurriedly to leave for Casterly Rock. End of POV. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting an amber glow over the narrow, winding streets of Flea Bottom. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and the distant echoes of laughter, but Jon Snow felt an unease settling in his gut. He and Ygritte had spent the day exploring the bustling market, her laughter ringing in his ears, but the shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual, as if they were alive. "Look at that!" Ygritte exclaimed, pointing toward a vendor selling freshly baked bread. "You could live on that aroma alone." Her bright smile was infectious, and Jon found himself momentarily forgetting the gnawing feeling in his stomach. "Let's see if we can snag a loaf," Jon suggested, his stomach growling in agreement. They approached the vendor, and Ygritte Duff, ever the charmer, began to flirt with the old man, her playful banter making him chuckle. As they left the stall with a warm loaf of bread, Jon glanced around, his instincts prickling. "Ygritte, we should head back," he said, his voice low. "I don't like the way some of these people are looking at us." Come on, Jon, you're too serious, she teased, taking a bite of the bread. Live a little. You're not a crow yet, are you? Not yet, he replied, trying to shake off the feeling. But the unease lingered, and he couldn't help but scan the streets for any sign of trouble. Just as they turned a corner, a group of gold cloaks emerged from the shadows, their gold cloaks glinting ominously in the fading light. Jon's heart raced as he recognized the familiar faces of the city watch, their expressions hard and menacing. There they are, one of the captains shouted, a sneer curling his lips. The little crow and his wildling friend. Jon felt a surge of panic. Ygritte, we need to go now, he urged, grabbing her arm. Before they could escape, the gold cloaks closed in, surrounding them with a predatory gleam in their eyes. What are you doing here, boy? The captain barked, stepping closer. Spying on the crown, are you? Jon's heart pounded in his chest. No, we were just— Shut your mouth, the captain roared, grabbing Jon by the collar and yanking him forward. You think you can wander these streets without consequence? Let him go, Ygritte shouted, her voice filled with defiance. He hasn't done anything wrong. The captain laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the alley. And what do you know, wildling? You're nothing but a thief and a liar. Jon struggled against the captain's grip, adrenaline surging through him. I'm not a spy, he protested, but his words fell on deaf ears. The gold cloaks began to rough him up, shoving him back and forth between them, laughter ringing in his ears. Jon fought back instinctively, throwing punches. But they were outnumbered. A blow to his stomach sent him crashing to the ground, gasping for air. Stop! Ygritte screamed, her voice laced with panic. She lunged forward, trying to pull Jon away, but the gold cloaks shoved her aside, their laughter growing louder. Just when Jon thought he might lose consciousness, he caught sight of a glint of steel. One of the gold cloak captains had drawn a dagger. A wicked smile on his face as he approached Jon, who was still on the ground, struggling to rise. Time to teach you a lesson, Crow, the captain sneered, raising the blade high. No, Ygritte screamed, desperation filling her voice. But before the captain could bring the dagger down, a figure burst onto the scene. Thoros of Myr, the Red Priest, charged forward, his presence commanding. Stand back, he shouted, his voice booming like thunder. The gold cloaks froze, momentarily taken aback by Thoros' sudden appearance. With a swift motion, Thoros pushed the captain aside, sending him stumbling backward. You dare lay a hand on this boy, he growled, his eyes blazing with fury. The gold cloaks hesitated, glancing at one another, unsure of how to respond to the priest's wrath. Thoros stood tall, his hands raised as if to ward off any further violence. Leave him be, or you'll answer to me. With a reluctant grunt, the gold cloaks retreated, their laughter fading into the distance. Jon lay on the ground, gasping for breath, his body aching from the beating. Yeldum knelt beside him, her eyes wide with concern. Jon, are you all right? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm fine, he managed to say, though pain shot through his ribs as he spoke. Thoros knelt beside Jon, his expression softening. You're not fine, lad, he said gently, inspecting the bruises forming on Jon's skin. You've made enemies in this city. As the adrenaline faded, Jon felt the full weight of what had just happened. I didn't mean to cause trouble, he said, his voice hoarse. I was just with Ygritte. Thoros shook his head, concern etched on his face. It's not just about you, Jon. You're in a dangerous game here, and you need to be aware of the risks. The gold cloaks are not just enforcers, they're pawns in a much larger scheme. Jon nodded, the reality of his situation settling in. He had been naive to think he could roam freely in a city filled with intrigue and danger. I understand, he said, looking up at Thoros. But what do I do now? Stay close to those you trust, Thoros advised, his voice steady, and be careful who you speak to. There are whispers in the shadows, and not all of them are friendly. As Jon rose to his feet, he felt the weight of Thoros' words. He had stumbled into a world far larger than himself, and he needed to navigate it carefully. Later that evening, as Jon and Ygritte made their way back to the Red Keep, they encountered a sympathetic servant named Melis. She was a young woman with kind eyes, and she had often offered Jon a friendly smile during his errands. Jon, what happened to you? Melis asked, concern etched on her face as she noticed the bruises and cuts on his skin. Just a run-in with the gold cloaks, Jon replied, trying to brush it off. Melis's expression turned serious. They've been on edge lately. I've heard whispers that someone is paying them to target you. What? Jon exclaimed, his heart racing. Who would do that? I don't know, Malus said, shaking her head, but it's clear that someone wants you hurt or silenced. You need to be careful, Jon. The city is not as safe as it seems. Jon felt a chill run down his spine. The realization that there were forces at play seeking to harm him was unsettling. Thank you for warning me, he said, gratitude flooding his voice. I'll be careful. Just remember, Malus added, her voice low, not everyone in the Red Keep is your enemy, but you need to watch your back. As they continued on their way, Ygritte glanced at Jon, her expression a mix of concern and guilt. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know, Jon replied, rubbing his bruised ribs, but I didn't think they would actually hurt me. Of course they would, Ygritte exclaimed, her voice rising. They're thugs, Jon. We need to be smarter than this. Ygritte softened, stepping closer. Just promise me you'll be more careful in future. I don't want to see you get hurt again. She reached out and gently touched his arm, her warmth a balm against the chill of the day. I promise, Jon replied, feeling a flicker of warmth at her concern. And thank you for sticking by me. Ygritte laughed, her spirit lifting the heaviness in the air. Well, someone has to keep you out of trouble, Crow. Besides, I can't let you get yourself killed. Who would bring me bread then? Jon chuckled, grateful for her lightheartedness. I'll make sure to keep the bread coming. That night, as Jon lay in bed, the events of the day replayed in his mind. The pain from the gold cloak's beating throbbed in rhythm with his racing heart. He knew he wasn't safe in King's Landing, but he felt trapped, unsure of where to turn. Meanwhile, Thoros sat in his chambers, penning a letter to Ned Stark. The flickering candlelight illuminated his face, as he wrote, his brow furrowed with concern. Dear Ned, he began, his handwriting steady. I write to you with grave concern for Jon. The city is filled with shadows, and there are whispers of danger surrounding him. The gold cloaks have been bribed by someone influential, and I fear for his safety. He is in a precarious position, and I believe it would be wise for him to leave King's Landing. Thoros paused, considering his words carefully. He knew that Ned would be conflicted, torn between his duties at Winterfell and his concern for Jon. I propose that I take Jon away from this city, to allow him to experience the world beyond these walls. It is time for him to discover how the world works, and I would like to accompany him on this journey. We could travel to Essos, where he can learn and grow free from the dangers that lurk here. As he sealed the letter, Thoros felt a sense of urgency wash over him. Jon was a child caught in a dangerous game, and he needed to be protected. In Winterfell, Ned Stark sat by the hearth, a letter from Thoros in his hands. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows across his face, but his expression was grave. He had always worried about Jon, his illegitimate son, and the dangers that came with life in King's Landing. That's why he left some of his trusted men to keep Jon safe there. He had also received news from his men informing him about the situations. It happened when they were stopped for a security check by gold clocks. Someone wants Jon dead, and it will happen in one or another way if he stayed in King's Landing. They had captured one of gold clocks who were ambushing Jon and only got these words out of him before he commits suicide. Ned thought of the boy's bravery and the spirit that burned within him. He had seen it in Jon's eyes, the same determination that had once driven him to join the Robert. But now, in the heart of a city filled with treachery, that spirit was at risk of being extinguished. Ned sighed, the weight of his responsibilities pressing heavily on him. He knew he had to act quickly. He has to go to Red Keep to talk with Robert as soon as he can. I left Jon with Thoros so that he can experience the world. If he lives in King's Landing, only then he will be the same as here, and even worse because I can guarantee his safety there. So I think it's good if he's taken away from all this. Days passed, and Jon continued to navigate the treacherous waters of King's Landing, but the weight of uncertainty hung over him like a storm cloud. He had been more cautious, avoiding the gold cloaks and staying close to Ygritte, but he couldn't shake the feeling that danger was lurking just around the corner. One evening, while sitting in the common room with Ygritte, Thoros returned with a letter in hand. He approached Jon, his expression serious. I have news from Winterfell, Thoros said, handing Jon the letter. It's from your father. Jon's heart raced as he took the letter, his fingers trembling slightly. He tore it open and began to read. Dear Thoros, the letter began. I appreciate your vigilance regarding Jon's safety. I understand the dangers he faces in King's Landing, and I agree that it would be wise for him to leave the city. I will arrange for his travel, and I trust you to guide him. Jon's heart sank at the implications of his father's words. He was being sent away, pulled from the only life he had known in King's Landing. "I will arrive in a week or two," the letter continued. "Make preparations for his departure. Ensure he is ready for the journey ahead." As Jon finished reading, he felt a mix of emotions swirling within him. He was relieved that his father cared for his safety, but the thought of leaving everything behind, Ygritte, his friends, and the city that had become his home, filled him with dread. "Jon?" Ygritte's voice broke through his thoughts, concern etched on her face. "What does it say?" "He's coming for me," Jon replied, his voice heavy. "I'm being sent away." Ygritte's expression turned serious. "To where?" "To Essos," Jon admitted, feeling the weight of his words. "I don't know how long I'll be gone." Ygritte's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and sadness washing over her. "You can't just leave like that. What about us?" Jon felt a pang of guilt at her words. "I don't want to go, Ygritte, but I have to be safe. I can't stay here with the gold cloaks after me." "Then I'll come with you," she declared, her voice firm. "I won't let you go alone." Jon was taken aback. "Ygritte, it's dangerous. You don't have to do this." "I want to," she insisted, determination shining in her eyes. "I won't let you face this alone. We're in this together." In the days that followed, Jon, Ygritte, and Thoros began to make preparations for their departure. They gathered supplies, packed what little Jon and Ygritte could take, and made plans for the journey ahead. Jon felt a sense of urgency as the day of their departure approached. He spent as much time with Ygritte as he could, trying to savor every moment before they left. They shared laughter, stories, and even a few stolen kisses, their bond growing stronger amidst the uncertainty. Ygritte stood at the edge of the balcony, her gaze sweeping across the sprawling city of King's Landing, a place so foreign yet strangely captivating. Sent here to gather information for her people, she had taken the place of the original man chosen for this mission after he was killed in a skirmish with the Night's Watch. The weight of her task had hung heavily on her shoulders, but everything changed the moment she met Jon Snow. At first she had approached him with the intent to spy, to learn the secrets of the realm and report back to the free folk. But as they explored the bustling markets, shared stolen moments of laughter, and ventured into the quiet corners of the city, her mission began to fade into the background. Each encounter with Jon, his fierce spirit, his kindness, and the way he looked at her as if she were more than just a wildling, pulled her deeper into a world she had never imagined could exist for someone like her. Slowly she found herself writing not just about the political intrigues of the court, but about the joy of their shared adventures and the warmth of his presence. Now, as she stood on the brink of a decision, she felt a stirring in her heart. The call of the wild was strong, but so was her desire to be by Jon's side. She realized that she could no longer separate herself from the life she yearned for, one filled with love and freedom. With a resolute heart, she decided to leave behind her mission and the burdens of her past, choosing instead to embrace the uncertainty of the future with Jon wherever it might lead them. One evening, as they sat together beneath the stars, Jon turned to Ygritte, his heart heavy. "I don't want to leave you," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. As the days passed, Thoros began to contact his trusted friends, and Ned's people in King's Landing, discreetly making arrangements for Jon and Ygritte's departure with him. He knew that the journey would not be easy, and secrecy was paramount. Jon's heart raced at the thought of leaving, but he also felt a sense of anticipation. He was ready to experience the world beyond the walls of King's Landing, to discover who he truly was. With Ygritte by his side, he felt a newfound strength. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, Jon stood on the balcony of the Red Keep, looking out over the sprawling landscape. He felt a mix of excitement and fear, knowing that a new chapter of his life was about to begin. But he also understood that danger still lurked in the shadows, and he had to remain vigilant. With Ygritte's laughter echoing in his ears, and Thoros' unwavering support, Jon felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey east was calling, and he was determined to answer. Tywin Lannister POV. Tywin sat in his chambers, reviewing documents and reports. When the door swung open, the captain entered, his face pale and shaken. "My lord," he began, his voice trembling. "The mission, it did not go as planned." Tywin's brow furrowed, irritation bubbling beneath the surface. "What do you mean it did not go as planned? Speak plainly." The gold cloaks. They confronted Jon Snow and Thoros, but they were not alone. The priest defended him, and the situation escalated. "We were forced to retreat," the captain stammered, his failure evident in every word. Tywin leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, as he considered the implications. So, you failed to eliminate a boy who poses a threat to my authority, and now you return to me empty-handed? The captain swallowed hard, the weight of Tywin's gaze pressing down on him. It was not supposed to happen this way, my lord. The priest, he was more formidable than we anticipated. Excuses, Tywin snapped, his voice cold and cutting. You underestimated the situation, and now you have left a loose end. Jon Snow will not simply fade away because you wish it so. While he had intended to eliminate the threat, he found himself considering the boy's potential. Perhaps there was a way to manipulate this situation to his advantage. Let him go, Tywin said, his voice calm yet decisive. For now, he is not worth the trouble, but keep an eye on him. If he continues to stir discontent among the people, we will deal with him in a more permanent manner. The captain blinked in surprise. You're letting him go, my lord? Yes, Tywin replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. But do not mistake my leniency for weakness. If Jon Snow becomes a nuisance, I will not hesitate to remove him. Consider this your final warning. As the captain bowed and exited the room, Tywin leaned back in his chair, contemplating the unfolding dynamics in King's Landing. The game was ever-changing, and while Jon Snow had escaped his grasp this time, Tywin knew that the boy's ambition and charisma could either be a weapon or a liability. He would bide his time, watching and waiting, ready to strike when the moment was right. In the depths of his mind, Tywin calculated the potential outcomes. Jon Snow could be a pawn in his game, a way to manipulate the Stark legacy to his advantage. Or he could become a rival, a force that challenged his authority. Either way, Tywin Lancel was not a man to be trifled with, and he would ensure that the scales tipped in his favor. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the sprawling city of King's Landing. Jon Snow, only 11 years old, sat on the edge of his bed in the Red Keep, his heart racing with anticipation and anxiety. He had been summoned to his father's chambers, a rare occurrence that filled him with both hope and dread. Ned Stark, the Warden of the North, was a figure of strength and honor, but Jon could sense an undercurrent of tension in the air. As he made his way through the familiar stone corridors, memories flooded his mind. He recalled the countless times he had wandered these halls, always feeling a little out of place, a little different from the other children. The weight of his parentage hung over him like a shadow, a secret he had yet to fully grasp. Would today bring answers, or would it deepen the mystery that surrounded his existence? When he reached Ned's chambers, he hesitated for a moment, his hand hovering over the door. Taking a deep breath, he knocked softly. "Father?" "Come in, Jon," Ned's voice called from within, steady and reassuring. Jon pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was filled with the warm glow of candlelight, illuminating the rich tapestries that adorned the walls. Ned sat at a sturdy wooden desk, his brow furrowed in thought as he penned a letter. He looked up as Jon entered, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "Ah, Jon. Come, sit with me." Ned gestured to the chair opposite him. Jon obeyed, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. Ned leaned back in his chair, studying Jon with a gaze that held both pride and sorrow. "I wanted to speak with you before you leave for Braavos," he began, his voice heavy with emotion. "You've grown so much, and I am proud of the young man you are becoming." Jon felt warmth spread through him at his father's words, but he also noticed the way Ned's eyes seemed to flicker with something unspoken. "Thank you, Father. Ned nodded, his expression shifting slightly. "It's important that you understand, Jon. The world outside these walls is vast and filled with challenges. You must be strong and wise, and always remember who you are." Jon nodded, but the weight of those words felt heavy. "I will, Father. I promise." Ned reached into his desk and pulled out a sealed letter, sliding it across the table toward Jon. "This is for you. Do not open it until you feel ready to know who you truly are." Jon's heart raced at the mysterious words. "What do you mean? What's in it?" "Answers," Ned said simply, his gaze unwavering. "But they are not for you yet. You will know when the time is right." Jon nodded, feeling the weight of the letter in his hands. It was heavy, not just with the wax seal, but with the promise of secrets yet to be uncovered. "I'll keep it safe," he vowed, tucking it into his tunic. As Jon prepared to leave the chambers, a soft knock at the door interrupted them. Ned opened it to reveal Arya, his spirited younger sister. Her face lit up when she saw Jon, but then she quickly masked her excitement with a faux scowl. "Jon Snow, you're leaving us," she said, crossing her arms defiantly. "You better not forget about me when you're off being a hero." Jon chuckled, his heart swelling at the sight of her. I could never forget you, Arya. You're the bravest person I know. With a quick glance at Ned, Arya stepped inside, her expression softening. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wooden wolf, intricately carved and polished. I made this for you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's a dire wolf, like the ones from Winterfell. Jon's eyes widened as he took the wooden wolf into his hands, feeling the smooth surface beneath his fingers. It's beautiful, Arya. Thank you. Promise me you'll keep it close, she insisted, her eyes shining with unshed tears, and that you'll come back to visit. I promise, Jon said, feeling a lump form in his throat. He reached out and pulled her into a tight embrace, the warmth of her small frame comforting him. I'll always come back for you. As Arya stepped back, the door opened again, and Sansa entered, her expression a mixture of annoyance and sadness. What are you two doing in here? She asked, trying to sound aloof, but failing to hide the tremor in her voice. I was just saying goodbye to Jon, Arya replied, a hint of defiance in her tone. Sansa's eyes softened as she looked at Jon, and for a moment the tension between them faded. You're really leaving, aren't you? She said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jon nodded, feeling a pang of sorrow at the thought of leaving his sisters behind. I have to go, Sansa. It's for the best. Sansa stepped forward, her facade crumbling as tears welled in her eyes. You're not just my half-brother, Jon. You're my family. I don't want you to go. Jon opened his arms, and Sansa rushed into his embrace, her tears soaking into his tunic. I'll miss you, Jon. Please come back safe. I will, Sansa. I promise, he said softly, holding her tightly as she cried. The moment felt bittersweet, a reminder of the bond they shared despite the complexities of their family. As Sansa stepped back, wiping her tears away, Robb entered the room, his expression serious yet filled with warmth. Jon, he said, stepping forward and clasping Jon's shoulder firmly. You're going to make us proud out there. I know it. Jon felt a swell of pride at his brother's words. Thanks, Robb. I'll do my best. Robb's grip tightened, and he leaned in closer. You're a Stark, Jon. Remember that. We'll ride together one day. I swear it. I look forward to it, Jon replied, the bond between them strengthening in that moment. He felt a sense of belonging, a reminder of the family he was leaving behind. With the farewell said, Jon stepped back, taking a moment to absorb the warmth of his family. He knew that leaving was necessary, but it felt like tearing a piece of himself away. He glanced at Ned, who stood silently by the door, his expression unreadable. Are you ready, Jon? Ned asked, his voice steady but tinged with an emotion Jon couldn't quite place. Jon nodded, though his heart felt heavy. I think so. As they made their way to the docks, Jon felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. The streets of King's Landing were bustling with activity, but all he could focus on was the impending separation from his family. When they reached the docks, the salty breeze whipped around them, carrying the sounds of seagulls and the creaking of ships. Jon's heart raced as he spotted the small vessel that would take him away from everything he had known. Thoros stood at the ship's railing, his expression calm and reassuring. Are you ready, Jon? He asked, his voice steady. Jon took a deep breath, steeling himself for the journey ahead. I am. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ned Stark made his way to the throne room, his heart heavy with concern. He found King Robert Baratheon lounging on the Iron Throne, surrounded by the trappings of power, yet the king's demeanor was far from regal. He was wiping the remnants of a lavish feast from his beard, laughing with his advisors, his laughter echoing through the hall. Ned cleared his throat, drawing Robert's attention. Your Grace, Ned began, his tone measured but firm. I need to speak with you about Jon. He was nearly harmed some days ago, and I believe it was orchestrated. Robert waved a dismissive hand, a grin plastered on his face. Ned, I've been busy. The realm is rife with problems, and I can't be expected to babysit every boy in the city. You know how it is. But Ned was not easily swayed. Busy? You were busy feasting while your guards failed to protect a boy who is both a Stark and your friend's child. If Thoros hadn't intervened, Jon could have been seriously hurt, or worse. Robert's expression shifted, a flicker of seriousness crossing his features. I have been keeping an eye on the matter, I assure you. If Thoros hadn't been there, one of my guards would have stepped in. But I suspect Tywin Lancel's hand in this. He has his schemes, and while I have no proof, the timing is too convenient. Ned nodded, his brow furrowing. And yet, you do nothing? Robert sighed, leaning back in his throne, his jovial facade slipping. I know, Ned, The kingdom's coffers are nearly empty, and I can't afford to alienate the Lannisters. Not now. We need their gold to stabilize the realm. You understand, don't you? Ned studied his old friend, seeing the weight of kingship settling heavily on his shoulders. I do, he replied, his voice steady. But you must remain vigilant. Jon is not just a boy, he is a Stark, and his future could hold great consequences for us all. With that, Ned offered a respectful nod, turning to leave the throne room. I will always stand by you, Robert, but I hope you recognize the dangers lurking in the shadows. As he walked away, he kept his disappointment hidden beneath a mask of loyalty, knowing that the king was caught in a web of politics that he could not easily escape. As Jon stepped onto the ship, he turned back to look at Ned, who stood at the edge of the dock, watching with a heavy heart. Ned's thoughts swirled with worry and pride. He knew that sending Jon away was necessary for his safety, but it also felt like a severing of ties, a loss that weighed heavily on his soul. Ned thought of the boy's potential, the strength he had shown even at such a young age. He had always been proud of Jon, but now, as he watched him sail away, he felt a pang of regret. What if he never saw him again? What if the boy was lost to the world, just as he had lost so many others? With a final wave, Jon turned back to the ship, determination flooding his veins. He would face whatever challenges lay ahead, not just for himself, but for the family he loved. As the ship set sail, Jon stood at the bow, watching the shores of King's Landing recede into the distance. The wind whipped through his hair, and he took a deep breath, feeling a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. Thoros joined him, leaning against the railing with a thoughtful expression. You've taken your first step into a larger world, Jon, he said, his voice steady. But remember, the journey will not be easy. I know, Jon replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon, but I'm ready for whatever comes next. As the ship sailed eastward, Jon felt a sense of freedom wash over him. He was leaving behind the dangers of King's Landing, but he also understood that new challenges awaited him in Essos. He was embarking on a journey that would shape his destiny, and he was determined to face it head-on. Days turned into weeks as the ship sailed across the narrow sea, the waves crashing against the hull. Jon spent his time helping the crew, learning the ways of the sea, and forging a bond with Thoros. The priest shared stories of his travels, of the lands he had seen, and the people he had met. Jon felt a sense of camaraderie with Thoros, a connection that deepened as they faced the challenges of the journey together. They shared laughter, meals, and stories under the starlit sky, and Jon found solace in the priest's wisdom. But even amidst the camaraderie, Jon couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that lingered in the back of his mind. He was leaving behind the only life he had known, and the thought of what lay ahead filled him with a mix of excitement and fear. As they sailed closer to Essos, Jon felt a sense of anticipation building within him. He was on the brink of a new beginning, a chance to forge his own path away from the shadows of King's Landing. One evening, as they gathered on deck to watch the sunset, Thoros turned to Jon, a thoughtful expression on his face. What do you hope to find in Essos, Jon? Jon considered the question, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I want to find my place in the world, he admitted. I want to discover who I am beyond the walls of the Red Keep. Thoros nodded, understanding in his eyes. You have the potential to be great, Jon. But remember, greatness comes with its own burdens. You must be prepared to face them. I will, Jon replied, determination flooding his voice. I won't let fear hold me back. As the ship glided smoothly over the waves, Jon found a quiet moment on deck, where he leaned against the railing, gazing out at the vast expanse of the sea. Ygritte joined him, her fiery red hair catching the light of the setting sun, casting a warm glow around her. She stood close, her presence a comforting reminder of the bond they had forged in the chaos of King's Landing. What are you thinking about, Crow? She asked, her voice teasing yet soft. Jon turned to her, a smile breaking through his earlier apprehension. I was just thinking about what lies ahead. Everything feels so uncertain, and I can't help but wonder if I'm truly ready for it. Ygritte stepped closer, her expression serious now. Listen, Jon, she said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You're stronger than you realize. The world may be big and scary, but you've got the heart of a wolf. We'll face it together, no matter what comes our way. I won't let you face it alone. Her words wrapped around him like a warm blanket, easing the tension that had been building in his chest. You really believe that? He asked, searching her eyes for confirmation. Of course I do, she replied, her voice steady. We're in this together, and I'll always have your back. Wherever we go, whatever we face, we'll find our way. Just trust yourself, Jon. Feeling a surge of confidence, Jon nodded. With you by my side, I know I can handle anything. The connection between them deepened in that moment, solidifying their resolve to face the future together, no matter the challenges that awaited them on the horizon. Thoros stood beside him, a reassuring presence as they prepared to disembark. Remember, Jon, he said, his voice steady. This is just the beginning. There will be challenges, but you have the strength to face them. Jon nodded, feeling a surge of determination. I won't back down. I'll find my way. With Thoros by his side and Ygritte's unwavering support, Jon took his first steps into the unknown, ready to embrace whatever challenges awaited him. The journey east had begun, and he was determined to make the most of it. The salty breeze whipped through Jon Snow's hair as he stood at the bow of the ship, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This voyage across the narrow sea was unlike anything he had ever experienced. At just about 12 years old, Jon had lived most of his life at Winterfell, surrounded by the cold, familiar embrace of the North. Now, he was embarking on an adventure that would take him far beyond the walls of his home, into the vastness of the world. The ship, a sturdy trading vessel named the Sea Serpent, creaked and groaned underfoot as it cut through the waves. Braavosi sailors bustled about, their voices a blend of laughter and shouts, punctuated by the occasional strum of a lute. Jon watched them with wide eyes, fascinated by their sun-kissed skin and the strange, colorful clothes they wore. The world felt alive here, vibrant and chaotic, an exhilarating contrast to the rigid structure of his life at Winterfell. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a storm began to brew. Dark clouds rolled in, swallowing the light and casting an ominous shadow over the ship. The sailors, once jovial, now moved with urgency, securing sails and preparing for the tempest that was about to unleash its fury. Jon felt a knot of anxiety twist in his stomach as the wind picked up, howling through the rigging. He had never seen a storm at sea before, and the sight was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Waves crashed against the ship, sending sprays of salt water into the air. Jon clung to the railing, his knuckles white, as the vessel pitched and rolled beneath him. "Hold on, lad," Thoros of Myr called out, his voice booming above the roar of the wind. He was a man of considerable size, with a thick beard and a warm smile that put Jon at ease. "This is just a bit of fun. The sea's got a mind of its own, but she won't swallow you whole if you respect her." Jon nodded, though his heart raced. He had always been drawn to fire. The warmth, the light, the way it danced and flickered. But the sea was a different beast altogether, wild and unpredictable. As the first drops of rain fell, he felt a shiver run down his spine. Thoros moved closer, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm. "Come, Jon, let me show you something." Thoros led Jon to a sheltered corner of the deck, where he produced a small lantern filled with oil and a wick. The rain began to pour, but Thoros seemed unfazed. He lit the lantern, the flame flickering defiantly against the storm. "Fire is our guide, lad," Thoros explained, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Even in the darkest of nights and the thickest of fogs, fire will always show us the way. Sailors trust in it, just as we trust in the gods." Jon watched, entranced, as the flame danced in the wind, casting shadows that flickered across Thoros' face. "But what if the fire goes out?" Jon asked, his voice barely audible over the storm. Thoros chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that cut through the chaos. "Then we light it again. The fire is a part of us, just as we are a part of the sea. It teaches us resilience, to rise again no matter how many times we fall." As the storm raged on, Jon felt a surge of courage. He wanted to trust in the flame, to believe that it could guide him through whatever challenges lay ahead. The rain soaked through his clothes, but he didn't mind. He was alive and the world was opening up before him. That night, as the storm continued to howl outside, Jon found himself tossing and turning in his narrow bunk. The ship creaked around him, the sound a lullaby of wood and water, but sleep eluded him. Instead, he drifted into a dream. In this dream, he stood on a rocky shore, the waves crashing violently against the rocks. The sky was dark, filled with swirling clouds, and in the distance, he saw shapes moving beneath the surface of the water. Suddenly, a smaller dragon emerged, its scales glimmering like jewels in the moonlight. It had two glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness, watching him intently. Jon felt a strange connection to the creature, a pull that drew him closer. He reached out a hand, but the dragon only watched, its gaze unwavering. Just as he was about to step forward, a powerful wave surged up, crashing over him and pulling him under. He woke with a start, gasping for breath. the remnants of the dream clinging to him like fog. The ship rocked gently beneath him, but the fear from the dream lingered in his chest. What did it mean? Why had he dreamed of a dragon? The next day dawned bright and clear, the storm a distant memory. Jon stood on deck, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. He spotted Ygritte, her red hair shining like fire in the sunlight, climbing the rigging with the agility of a squirrel. She laughed, a wild, carefree sound that made Jon's heart race. "Come on, Jon, don't be a coward," she called down to him, her voice teasing. "Climb up here, you'll see the whole world from up high." Jon hesitated, looking up at the swaying ropes and the precarious heights. "I don't know, Ygritte, what if I fall?" "Then you'll fall, but it'll be worth it," she shouted back, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You can't let fear hold you back. Life's too short for that." With a deep breath, Jon decided to take the plunge. He began to climb, his hands gripping the ropes tightly. The height made his stomach churn, but as he ascended, a thrill coursed through him. Ygritte was right, this was exhilarating. When he finally reached her, they both laughed, their voices mingling in the air. "See? Not so hard," Ygritte exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. But just as Jon began to feel a sense of triumph, a sudden gust of wind caught the ship, causing it to lurch. He lost his balance, and for a terrifying moment he felt himself slipping. Ygritte grabbed his arm just in time, her grip strong and steady. "Hold on, Jon," she shouted, her voice fierce. Together they clung to the rigging, laughter turning to gasps as they steadied themselves. Once the ship settled, they both burst into laughter, the adrenaline coursing through them. "That was close," Jon said, his heart racing. "Next time we won't fall," Ygritte replied, her smile infectious. In that moment, Jon felt a bond with her that transcended words, a shared thrill, a daring spirit that made the world feel boundless. As the days passed, the ship continued its journey across the narrow sea. One afternoon, while the sun hung high in the sky, Jon stood at the rail, watching the waves lap against the hull. Suddenly, a shout rang out from the crow's nest. Off the starboard bow, a small boat. Jon squinted into the distance, and his heart sank. A battered rowboat bobbed precariously on the waves, its occupants struggling to keep it afloat. He could see two figures inside, one slumped against the side, blood staining the wood beneath him. "Thoros, we have to help them," Jon called, his voice urgent. Thoros rushed to Jon's side, scanning the horizon. "Aye, lad, we can't leave them to the sea. Prepare the small boat." Within moments, the crew sprang into action, lowering a small boat into the water. Jon's heart raced as he climbed in alongside Thoros and Ygritte, who had joined them without hesitation. The three of them rowed furiously toward the distressed vessel, their determination pushing them forward. As they drew closer, Jon could see the wounded man, a young sailor, barely older than himself, leaning against the side, his face pale and slick with sweat. The other occupant, a woman with long dark hair, was frantically trying to keep him conscious. "Help us," she cried, her voice raw with fear. "He's hurt. We were attacked by pirates." Jon felt a surge of adrenaline. "We'll get him on our ship. Hold on." With careful movements, they managed to pull the injured sailor aboard their lifeboat. The woman followed, her eyes wide with gratitude and desperation. Thank you," she gasped, clutching her companion's hand. Just as they began to row back toward the sea serpent, a shadow loomed over them. Jon looked up to see a larger ship approaching, its sails billowing in the wind. The black flag fluttered ominously above its mast, bearing the sigil of a skull and crossed swords. "Pirates!" Thoros shouted, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "We need to move." But it was too late. The pirate ship bore down on them, cutting through the waves with alarming speed. Jon's heart raced as he glanced back at the injured sailor, who was now unconscious, and the woman, who looked terrified. "Row faster," Ygritte urged, her eyes darting between the approaching ship and the wounded man. The lifeboat surged forward, but the pirates were closing in. "Prepare to fight," Thoros commanded, pulling a dagger from his belt. "We won't let them take what we've saved." As the pirate ship drew alongside them, men with rough faces and cruel eyes leaned over the side, shouting taunts. "What do we have here? A couple of soft-hearted fools and a couple of fish out of water?" One of the pirates sneered, brandishing a cutlass. "Hand over the wounded man and we might let you live." Jon felt a surge of anger. "We won't let you take him," he shouted, gripping the side of the boat tightly. The pirate laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you can stop us, boy? You're outnumbered." Ygritte, her face set in determination. picked up a makeshift paddle, and brandished it like a weapon. "You'll have to go through us first." Jon's heart pounded in his chest, fear and adrenaline coursing through him. He had never been in a fight before, but something deep within him ignited a fierce protectiveness for the wounded sailor and the woman who had pleaded for their help. As the pirates jumped into their small boat, Jon and Ygritte readied themselves. Thoros stood at the front, his dagger gleaming in the sunlight. "Stay close to me, Jon," he shouted, his voice steady. The first pirate leaped onto their boat, a wild grin on his face. Thoros lunged forward, his dagger flashing through the air. The two clashed, metal ringing against metal, and Jon felt a rush of fear. "Ygritte!" he yelled, glancing back to see her fending off another pirate with the paddle. She swung it with all her might, connecting with the pirate's side and sending him sprawling back into the water. "Good shot," Jon shouted, feeling a surge of pride. But they were still outnumbered, and more pirates were climbing aboard. Jon took a deep breath, summoning his courage. He grabbed a loose piece of wood from the boat and swung it at the nearest pirate, who was distracted by Thoros. The makeshift weapon connected with a satisfying thud, sending the man stumbling backward. "Nice one, Jon!" Ygritte cheered, her voice filled with excitement. But the fight was far from over. The remaining pirates pressed forward, their faces twisted with rage. Jon felt a surge of panic as he realized how dangerous the situation had become. They were fighting for their lives, and the stakes had never been higher. Thoros fought valiantly, his movements fluid and powerful. He dispatched one pirate after another, but there were too many. Jon could see the fear in the woman's eyes as she clutched her unconscious companion, her face pale with terror. Thoros shouted to her, "Row back to our ship. We'll hold them off." With a desperate nod, the woman took the oars and began to row back toward the sea serpent. Jon felt a pang of regret, wishing he could do more to help, but he knew they had to escape. As the woman rowed furiously, Jon and Ygritte continued to fend off the pirates. The fight raged on, the air filled with shouts and the clash of weapons. Jon swung his makeshift weapon again, feeling the adrenaline coursing through him. But just as they seemed to gain the upper hand, a loud crack echoed through the air. Jon turned to see a pirate swinging a heavy rope, catching Thoros off guard. The rope wrapped around Thoros' arms, yanking him down to the deck. "Thoros!" Jon shouted, panic rising in his chest. "Keep fighting, Jon," Thoros yelled, struggling against the bindings. "Don't let them take you." Jon's heart raced as he fought back tears. He couldn't let Thoros down. With renewed determination, he swung at the pirate who had taken down Thoros, hitting him squarely in the side. The man stumbled, and Jon seized the moment, pushing him off the boat. "Ygritte, we have to help him," Jon shouted, glancing back at Thoros, who was still struggling against his captors. Ygritte nodded, her face set in determination. "Let's do it." Together they charged the pirates, their hearts pounding in unison. Jon felt a surge of strength as they fought side by side, refusing to back down. With one final push, they managed to free Thoros from the rope, and the three of them fought back against the remaining pirates. The tide of battle began to turn in their favor, and the pirates, realizing they were outmatched, began to retreat. As the last pirate fell into the water, Jon breathed a sigh of relief. They had done it. They had fought off the attackers and saved the wounded sailor. Thoros, panting and bruised but alive, clapped Jon on the shoulder. "You fought bravely, lad. I knew you had it in you." Jon felt a swell of pride, his heart racing with the thrill of victory. "We did it together," he exclaimed, looking at Ygritte, who was grinning widely. The woman, still trembling, looked at them with gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaky. "You saved us." "Let's get you back to our ship," Thoros said, his tone gentle. "We'll take care of your friend." As they rowed back to the sea serpent, Jon felt a sense of camaraderie with Thoros and Ygritte. They had faced danger together and emerged victorious. The bond between them had grown stronger, forged in the heat of battle. Once aboard their ship, the crew rushed to help the injured sailor, tending to his wounds with practiced hands. Jon watched, his heart filled with a mix of relief and pride. He had faced his fears and stood up for what was right, and he knew that he would carry this experience with him for the rest of his life. As the sun began to set over Braavos, casting a golden glow across the harbor, Jon realized that the world was far bigger and stranger than he had ever imagined. He had faced danger and found strength within himself, and he was ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. With Ygritte and Thoros by his side, Jon Snow stood on the deck of the Sea Serpent, looking out at the horizon, where the sun dipped below the waves. The promise of adventure stretched out before him, a journey that would shape him in ways he could not yet fathom. The world awaited, and he was ready to meet it head-on. Jon Snow stood at the edge of the bustling docks of Braavos, his heart racing with excitement and unease. The air was thick with the scent of salt and spices, the sounds of laughter and shouts mingling with the cries of seagulls circling overhead. At 12 years old, Jon felt both small and immense, a mere boy in a vast world that stretched far beyond the frigid walls of Winterfell. As he took his first steps onto the cobblestone streets of Braavos, Jon was struck by the vibrant chaos that surrounded him. The city was a tapestry of color and sound, with courtesans in flowing silks beckoning passers-by, merchants hawking their wares, and children darting through the throngs of people. He had heard tales of Braavos, the city of canals and dreams, but nothing could prepare him for the reality of it. "Come on, Jon, you can't just stand there," Ygritte called, her voice bright with mischief. She tugged at his arm, pulling him deeper into the thrumming heart of the city. Her red hair caught the sunlight, a fiery banner that seemed to lead the way. "There's so much to see." Jon followed her, a grin spreading across his face despite the overwhelming sights and sounds. He felt alive, the pulse of the city igniting something within him. They passed through narrow alleyways where the walls were painted with vibrant murals, depicting scenes of gods and heroes, lovers and warriors. The streets soon gave way to a network of canals, the water glimmering under the midday sun. Jon marveled at the gondolas gliding silently through the waterways, their oarsmen guiding them with practiced ease. He had never seen anything like it before. The very idea of a city built upon water fascinated him. "Look at that," Jon exclaimed, pointing to a group of children splashing playfully in the canal. "Can we go swimming?" Ygritte laughed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Maybe later. First, let's play some games." She led him to a bustling square where vendors sold fruits, trinkets, and colorful masks. A group of children gathered around a performer who was juggling knives, his movements fluid and mesmerizing. Jon watched, entranced, as the man tossed the blades high into the air, catching them with deft precision. "Let's try that," Ygritte said, her voice full of enthusiasm. "I bet you can do it." Jon hesitated, glancing at the sharp blades. "I don't know, Ygritte. What if I hurt myself?" "Where's your sense of adventure?" she teased, nudging him playfully. "Come on, live a little." With a deep breath, Jon stepped forward, determined to prove himself. The performer handed him a knife, and Jon gripped it tightly, his heart pounding in his chest. He mimicked the man's movements, tossing the blade into the air. It wobbled slightly, but fell back into his hand. Encouraged, he tried again, this time managing a clumsy but successful throw. "See, you're a natural," Ygritte cheered, clapping her hands. Jon laughed, the thrill of the moment washing over him. For a brief time he forgot about the weight of his past, and the uncertainty of his future. Here in Braavos he was just a boy, free to explore and play. As they wandered deeper into the city, Jon's attention was drawn to a grand building adorned with intricate carvings and statues of strange faceless figures. He felt a chill run down his spine as he read the sign above the entrance, the Temple of the Many-Faced God. "What's that place?" Jon asked, his curiosity piqued. Ygritte's expression shifted, her playful demeanor fading slightly. "I have heard of it from fellow travelers from ship. It's a temple for the faceless men, they say. They're assassins, worshippers of death and shadows. People say they can change their faces." Jon felt a shiver of unease. He had heard whispers of the faceless men, tales that sent chills down his spine. "Do you think they really can change their faces?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who knows?" Ygritte shrugged, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Maybe they'll come for you in the night." "Stop it!" Jon laughed, though a part of him felt unsettled by the thought. He couldn't shake the feeling that the city was watching him, listening to his every word. Just then, Thoros of Myr appeared, his presence commanding and warm. "You two are getting into trouble, I see," he said, a teasing smile on his lips. "I hope you're not planning to join the ranks of the faceless men." Jon shook his head, relieved to see Thoros. No, we were just exploring." Thoros's expression turned serious. "Remember, Jon, never speak of your dreams here. The city is listening." His tone was grave, and Jon felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had shared his dreams with Thoros, vivid visions that often felt more like memories than fantasies. But now, he understood the weight of the warning. Later that evening, Thoros took Jon to a lavish feast hosted by one of his former friends, a wealthy merchant. The grand hall was filled with laughter and music, the air thick with the scent of roasted meats and spiced wines. Jon felt out of place among the well-dressed guests, their laughter ringing like silver bells. "Stay close to me, Jon," Thoros instructed, guiding him through the crowd. "You'll be introduced as my squire, remember to be respectful." Jon nodded, trying to suppress his nerves. As they approached other people, they saw someone Jon recognized it was Illyrio Mopatis. Jon couldn't help but notice the man's rotund figure, and the way his eyes seemed to gleam with intelligence. He wore a silk robe, the colors vibrant and luxurious, and his presence commanded attention. "Thoros, my old friend," Illyrio exclaimed, embracing Thoros with a hearty laugh. "And who do we have here?" "This is Jon Snow, my squire," Thoros said, a hint of pride in his voice. Illyrio studied Jon closely, muttering, "Oh, that bastard son of Stark," his gaze lingering a moment too long. "The boy has his mother's look," he muttered, almost to himself. Jon felt a jolt of surprise, but kept his expression neutral, unsure how to respond. Who was this man to know anything about his mother? "Come, Jon," Illyrio said, his voice booming. "Join us at the table. You will find that Essos has much to offer a young man like yourself." As they sat down, Jon listened intently to the conversation swirling around him. The guests spoke of trade routes, political intrigues, and the ever-shifting alliances between the free cities. Jon felt a thrill at being part of such a dynamic world, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. During the feast, Illyrio regaled the guests with tales of his travels, his voice rich and captivating. Jon watched him, fascinated by the way the man commanded attention. Yet, there was something unsettling about the way he looked at Jon, as if he were trying to decipher a riddle hidden behind the boy's eyes. "We must be careful in these times," Illyrio said, his tone suddenly serious. "The world is changing, and we must adapt or risk being left behind." Jon felt a chill run down his spine. What did this man know about the world outside Braavos? About the dangers that lurked in the shadows? After the feast, Ygritte pulled Jon aside, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Come on, let's go play some games," she urged, dragging him back into the streets. They found themselves in a lively square filled with performers and vendors. The atmosphere was electric, the air alive with laughter and shouts. Ygritte led Jon to a group of children engaged in a game of knife-throwing, their laughter ringing through the night. "Let's join them," Ygritte exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. Jon hesitated, glancing at the sharp blades. "I'm not sure." "Come on, it'll be fun," she insisted, her eyes gleaming with excitement. With a deep breath, Jon stepped forward, determined to prove himself. He picked up a knife, his heart racing as he took aim. The throw was clumsy, but it landed in the target, earning him cheers from the other children. "See? You're a natural." Ygritte laughed, her face lit up with joy. Jon felt a rush of pride, the thrill of the game washing away his worries. He joined in the laughter, feeling like he belonged in this moment. But as they played, Jon's gaze drifted to the edges of the square, where he noticed a group of boys watching them. One of them, wearing a tunic emblazoned with the sigil of House Solace, stepped forward, a sneer on his lips. "What are you doing playing with the likes of her?" he called out, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're just a low class from the north." Jon's heart sank. He had heard the word bastard thrown at him before, but now it's lower class just because he is not wearing rich clothes. "I'm not just a bastard," he retorted, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm Jon Snow." The boy laughed, a cruel sound that made Jon's blood boil. "And what does that matter? You think you're special? You're nothing but a Snow in a city of real men." "Leave him alone," Ygritte shouted, stepping in front of Jon defiantly. "He's not bothering you." The boy's eyes narrowed as he looked at Ygritte. "And who are you to defend him? Just a wild girl playing in the streets?" Jon felt a surge of anger and protectiveness for Ygritte. "Stop it, you don't know anything about us." The boy stepped closer, his posture aggressive. "What are you going to do about it? Throw a knife at me?" Before Jon could respond, Ygritte grabbed his arm. "Let's just go, Jon. He's not worth it." Jon hesitated, torn between the desire to defend himself and the urge to avoid further conflict. He glanced at the boy, whose smug expression only fueled his frustration. "I'm not afraid of you," Jon said finally, though he could feel his heart racing. "Then prove it," the boy challenged, crossing his arms. "Meet me here tomorrow. We'll see if you're worth anything." "Why would I want to do that?" Jon shot back, his voice rising. "Because you're a coward if you don't," the boy taunted, his friends snickering behind him. Ygritte pulled Jon away, her grip firm. Come on, let's go. He's just trying to get a rise out of you. As they walked away, Jon felt a mix of anger and confusion. He didn't want to be seen as a coward, but he also didn't want to engage in a pointless fight. Who does he think he is? He muttered, frustration boiling within him. Just some spoiled brat from a rich house, Ygritte replied, her tone dismissive. Don't let him get to you. You are better than that. The next day dawned bright and clear, but Jon's heart felt heavy with unresolved tension. He couldn't shake the encounter with the boy from House Solace. As they wandered through the city, Jon's thoughts were consumed by the challenge. Are you going to meet him? Ygritte asked, glancing at Jon with an arched eyebrow. I don't know, Jon admitted, feeling torn. I don't want to be seen as weak, but I also don't want to fight. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, Ygritte said, her voice steady, but you don't have to do it on his terms. You can decide how you want to handle it. Jon nodded, appreciating her support. He didn't want to let the boy's words define him, but the thought of facing him again filled him with dread. Let's get some masks, Jon suggested, his eyes lighting up. We can join the parade later. Ygritte's face broke into a wide grin. Great idea. Let's pick the best ones. They spent the next hour trying on various masks, laughing as they posed and pretended to be characters from the stories they had heard. Jon felt a sense of freedom wash over him, the weight of the previous day's encounter fading into the background. Later that afternoon, Jon found himself standing at the square where he had first encountered the boy from House Solace. His heart raced as he spotted the group of boys, their laughter ringing through the air. The boy who had taunted him, named Aemon, was at the center, his arms crossed confidently. Look who decided to show up, Aemon called out, a smirk on his face. Ready to prove you're not a coward? Jon took a deep breath, steeling himself. He had decided he wouldn't back down, but he also wouldn't let anger cloud his judgment. I'm here, Jon said, his voice steady, but I'm not looking for a fight. No, Jon replied, his heart pounding. I just don't see the point in fighting over nothing. Nothing, Aemon scoffed, stepping closer. You think it's nothing? You think you can just walk around here and not be challenged? Jon felt the tension in the air, the anticipation of the other boys watching them. I'm not here to prove anything to you, he said firmly. I just want to enjoy my time in Braavos. Aemon's expression hardened, but Jon could see a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. So you're saying you're just gonna walk away? I'm saying I'm not interested in fighting, Jon replied, his voice unwavering. If you want to challenge me, that's your choice. But I refuse to be drawn into a pointless brawl. For a moment, silence hung between them, the other boys watching with rapt attention. Jon held his ground, refusing to let fear dictate his actions. Aemon's expression shifted again, and he stepped back, a hint of respect creeping into his demeanor. You're not what I expected, Snow, he said, his tone grudgingly admiring. Most boys would have jumped at the chance to fight. Maybe they would, Jon replied, his heart still racing. But I'm not like most boys. Aemon considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. Fine. No fight today, but I'll be watching you, Jon Snow. You might just surprise me. Jon felt a surge of relief wash over him. He had faced down a challenge without resorting to violence, and it felt empowering. I'm not here to impress you, he said, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. But if you want to see what I'm capable of, you might find it interesting. Aemon's smirk returned, but it was less mocking this time. Maybe we'll see about that. You're not so bad for a northern. Jon shrugged, feeling a sense of camaraderie begin to form. And you're not so bad for a spoiled brat. As they parted ways, Jon felt a sense of accomplishment. He hadn't made a friend, but he had found an unlikely acquaintance in Aemon. The encounter had shifted something within him, a realization that he could navigate the complexities of this new world without losing himself. As they wandered through the winding streets of Braavos, Jon's heart raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety. They passed through a marketplace, the vibrant colors and enticing scents drawing him in. But as they moved deeper into the crowd, Jon's attention was caught by a disturbing sight. A caravan of Pentoshi traders was making its way through the square, their oxen pulling heavy carts laden with goods. But it wasn't the goods that caught Jon's eye. It was the people who walked behind the carts, slaves, their faces blank and resigned, shackles clinking softly as they shuffled along. Jon felt his stomach twist in knots. He had heard of slavery in other cities, but seeing it firsthand was a different matter entirely. The sight of the shackled men and women, their eyes dull and lifeless, made his heart ache. He turned to Ygritte, who had also noticed the caravan. Ygritte's expression darkened. It's forbidden in Braavos, but it still happens. Some people don't care about the laws, as long as they can make a profit. Jon felt a surge of anger. That's not right, they shouldn't be treated like that. I know, Ygritte replied, her voice softening, but we can't do anything about it. Not here. Jon's heart sank. He felt helpless, the injustice of the situation weighing heavily on him. He wanted to fight back, to do something, but he knew that he was just a boy in a city filled with dangers he couldn't yet comprehend. As they continued walking, the image of the slaves lingered in Jon's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was witnessing something profoundly wrong, and he vowed to remember their faces. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the city, Jon and Ygritte returned to their lodgings, where Thoros awaited them. He looked up from a map spread across the table, his expression serious. Where have you two been? Thoros asked, concern etched on his face. I was beginning to worry. We were just exploring, Jon replied, trying to sound casual. It's amazing here. Thoros nodded, but his gaze turned stern. Braavos is a dangerous place for a boy who draws too much attention. You must be careful. The city has eyes everywhere, and you never know who might be watching. Jon felt a shiver run down his spine, recalling the man who had approached them in the square. I understand, Thoros. I'll be more careful. Good, Thoros said, his tone softening slightly. We must move on quickly. Pentos is not far from here, and it will be safer for you. As they prepared to leave, Jon couldn't shake the feeling that Braavos had left its mark on him. The vibrant streets, the laughter, the darkness hidden beneath the surface, it was a world he would carry with him, a reminder of the complexities of life beyond Winterfell. The next morning, they set out for Pentos, the sun rising over the horizon, casting a golden light over the canals of Braavos. Jon took one last look at the city, his heart a mix of emotions. He had experienced joy and fear, laughter and sorrow, all in the span of a few days. As they traveled south, Jon felt a sense of anticipation building within him. He was ready for whatever adventures lay ahead, eager to embrace the unknown. With Thoros and Ygritte by his side, he felt a sense of belonging, a connection to the world that was growing ever larger. The road to Pentos was winding and filled with surprises, but Jon was no longer just a boy from Winterfell. He was a part of something greater, a journey that would shape him in ways he could not yet imagine. The world awaited, and he was ready to meet it head-on. The journey from Braavos to Pentos was filled with a sense of anticipation that thrummed in Jon Snow's chest. He had spent the last few days in the vibrant chaos of Braavos, where the canals whispered secrets and the streets pulsed with life. The ship glided through the waters of the narrow sea, the salt breeze touzling Jon's dark hair. He stood at the bow, gazing out at the horizon, where the sky met the sea, lost in thought. The world was vast, and filled with wonders he had only dreamed of, yet beneath that excitement lay a current of unease. He had overheard whispers of danger in Braavos, and Thoros' warnings echoed in his mind. Pentos is a city where knives are hidden behind every smile. Jon turned as he heard footsteps behind him. Ygritte approached, her red hair catching the light like flames. What are you thinking about? She asked, her voice teasing yet curious. Just wondering what Pentos will be like, he replied, forcing a smile. I hope it's not as chaotic as Braavos. Ygritte laughed, a bright sound that cut through his worries. You're in for a treat, Jon Snow. Pentos is a city of merchants and traders. They say it's filled with riches and intrigue. Jon raised an eyebrow. Intrigue? That sounds dangerous. Dangerous can be fun, Ygritte said, with a wink. Besides, we have Thoros to protect us, right? Jon nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into a web of complexities far beyond their understanding. As the ship approached the docks, Jon caught sight of the sprawling city, its towers reaching high into the sky, adorned with colorful banners that fluttered in the wind. When they finally docked, Jon stepped onto the solid ground of Pentos, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The air was thick with the scent of spices and the sounds of merchants calling out to potential customers. Thoros led the way, his presence commanding as they made their way through the bustling streets. As they approached Ilio Mapatis's manse, Jon couldn't help but admire the opulence surrounding them. The manse was a grand structure, its walls adorned with intricate mosaics and gold accents. The gardens were lush, filled with exotic plants and flowers that Jon had never seen before. It was a world apart from the cold stone of Winterfell. Illyrio greeted them at the entrance, his rotund figure wrapped in vibrant silks that shimmered in the sunlight. "Welcome, my friends. Welcome to Pentos," he boomed, his voice warm and inviting. Come in, you must be weary from your travels." Jon couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as he entered the manse. There was something about Illyrio's smile that felt too wide, too knowing. As they moved through the lavish halls, Jon took in the lavish decor, golden goblets, tapestries depicting scenes of grandeur and servants bustling about, their expressions subservient yet watchful. "Make yourselves at home," Illyrio said, gesturing to a lavish banquet laid out in the dining hall. "Feast, drink, and tell me of your adventures." Jon's stomach growled at the sight of the food, roasted meats, fresh fruits, and sweet pastries. He felt a pang of hunger as he took a seat at the table, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the feeling that this man, with his extravagant lifestyle and knowing smile, held secrets that could change everything. After the feast, Jon felt restless. He excused himself from the table, needing to clear his mind. He wandered through the opulent halls until he found a door leading to the gardens. Stepping outside, he was greeted by the vibrant colors of blooming flowers and the sweet scent of jasmine. The gardens were a sanctuary amidst the excess of the manse. As Jon strolled through the pathways, he spotted a secluded area shaded by tall trees. Curiosity tugged at him, and he ventured deeper into the gardens. Drawn by the sound of hushed voices, he crept closer, careful to remain hidden behind a thick hedge. Peering through the leaves, Jon saw Illyrio speaking with two men dressed in dark robes. Their faces were serious, and Jon strained to hear their conversation. "The girl is safe for now," one of the men said, his voice low and urgent. "But we must move her soon. The Targaryens cannot remain in hiding forever." Jon's heart raced at the mention of the Targaryens. He had heard tales of the last Dragon Lords, of a family that had once ruled Westeros. But what girl were they talking about? He leaned in closer, trying to catch every word. Illyrio nodded, his expression grave. "We cannot underestimate the danger. If word gets out, it will be too late. We must ensure she is protected." Jon felt a chill run down his spine. Who was this girl, and why was she in hiding? He wanted to step forward, to confront them, but fear held him back. He remained hidden, listening intently. A shiver of excitement coursed through Jon. Dragons? Could it be true? The stories of dragons and their power had always captivated him. But what did it mean for this girl? And why was Illyrio so invested in her fate? Before he could ponder further, Ygritte's voice broke through his thoughts. "Jon, where are you?" Jon quickly stepped back, heart racing. He didn't want Ygritte to see him eavesdropping, but he also felt compelled to learn more. He turned and walked back toward the main path, trying to appear casual. "Sorry, I was just," Jon began, but Ygritte cut him off, her expression suddenly stormy. "Just what? Sneaking around like a thief?" she snapped, crossing her arms. "You've been gone too long." Jon frowned, taken aback by her sharp tone. "I just needed some air. It's too much in there." "Too much attention on you, you mean," Ygritte retorted. "Those servants keep looking at you like you're some kind of prize." Jon felt a flush of embarrassment. "It's not my fault they're friendly." "Friendly? Or flirty?" Ygritte shot back, her green eyes narrowing. "You don't even notice, do you?" Jon opened his mouth to protest, but found himself at a loss for words. "I didn't mean to—" "Whatever," Ygritte huffed, turning on her heel and storming off. "Ygritte, wait," Jon called after her, but she didn't look back. Frustration bubbled within him. Why was she acting like this? It was just harmless banter, wasn't it? Jon returned to the manse, feeling unsettled. He tried to shake off the encounter with Ygritte, but her words echoed in his mind. He didn't want to hurt her feelings, but he also didn't understand why she was so jealous. As he wandered through the halls, he overheard Illyrio speaking to a group of guests, their laughter ringing through the air. Jon paused, straining to hear their conversation. "The boy is a wolf pup with fire in his eyes," Illyrio said, his voice booming. "He has potential, but he must learn to navigate this world carefully. Jon felt a mix of pride and distrust at Illyrio's words. Was he just another pawn in this man's game? He didn't want to be seen as a prize or a tool for someone else's ambitions. Later that evening, Jon found himself in the courtyard, staring up at the stars. The night was clear, the moon shining brightly above. He felt a sense of longing, a desire to understand his place in this world. Suddenly he heard footsteps approaching. Turning, he saw Ygritte walking toward him, her expression softer now. "I'm sorry about earlier," she said, her voice quieter. "I didn't mean to snap at you." Jon sighed, feeling a wave of relief. "It's okay. I didn't think it would bother you." "It's just that I don't want you to get too close to anyone here," Ygritte admitted, her eyes downcast. "You're my friend, Jon. I don't want to lose you to some fancy lordling or servant." Jon stepped closer, sensing the vulnerability in her voice. "You won't lose me, Ygritte. You are important to me." She looked up, a hint of a smile breaking through her earlier frustration. "Really?" "Of course," Jon replied, feeling a warmth spread through him. "We've been through too much together for that." Ygritte smiled, the tension between them easing. "Good, because I don't want to be just another girl in your life." Jon chuckled softly. "You're not. You're special." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the stars twinkling above them. Jon felt a sense of connection with Ygritte, a bond that transcended their earlier quarrel. As the night wore on, Thoros joined them in the courtyard, his expression serious. "You two seem to have worked things out," he noted, a hint of amusement in his voice. "But remember, Pentos is a city of smiles that hide knives." Jon nodded, the weight of Thoros' words settling in. "I know, I overheard something today, about a girl in hiding." Thoros raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What did you hear?" Jon recounted what he had overheard in the gardens, about the Targaryen girl. Thoros listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "It seems Illyrio is playing a dangerous game," Thoros said finally. "The Targaryens are not to be underestimated. If they are indeed in hiding, it could mean trouble for us all." Jon felt a shiver run down his spine. The mention of Targaryens, of dragons, stirred something deep within him. "What should we do?" "For now, we observe," Thoros replied. "Keep your ears open, but do not draw attention to yourself. The city is filled with intrigue, and we must tread carefully." Jon nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was no longer just a boy from Winterfell. He was part of something larger, a web of secrets that could change the course of their lives. That night, as Jon lay in bed, sleep came slowly. His mind raced with thoughts of Pentos, of Illyrio, and the mysterious girl in hiding. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the precipice of something significant. As he drifted into sleep, his dreams took him to a different place. He found himself standing in a vast, open field, the sky above filled with swirling clouds. In the distance, he saw a figure, a girl with silver hair, her features ethereal and haunting. She reached out toward him, her hand extended. In her other hand, she cradled a dragon's egg, its surface glimmering like polished stone. Jon felt a pull toward her, an instinctive urge to reach out and take the egg. "Help me," she whispered, her voice soft yet urgent. "I need you." Jon's heart raced as he stepped forward, but just as he was about to touch her hand, the dream shifted. The sky darkened, and shadows loomed around them. The girl's expression turned fearful, and Jon felt a rush of panic. "Don't let them take me," she cried, her voice echoing in the darkness. Jon awoke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. He sat up in bed, gasping for breath. The dream lingered in his mind, vivid and unsettling. Who was the girl? Why did she need him? He glanced out the window at the stars, feeling a sense of destiny weaving through his thoughts. The world was changing, and he was caught in its tide. The next morning, Jon shared his dream with Thoros and Ygritte over breakfast. "I saw a girl with silver hair," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "She was reaching for a dragon's egg." Thoros listened intently, his expression serious. "Dreams can be powerful, Jon. They may hold truths we cannot yet see." Ygritte frowned, her brow furrowed. "Do you think it means something about the girl in hiding?" "I don't know," Jon admitted, "but I feel like it's connected. We need to find out more about her." Thoros nodded, his eyes narrowing in thought. "Then we shall, But we must proceed with caution. Illyrio is a man of many secrets, and we must be careful not to reveal too much. As they finished their meal, Jon glanced out the window, the sun rising over Pentos. The day was filled with promise, and he felt the thrill of adventure coursing through him. Whatever awaited them, he was ready to meet it head-on.